Hotep, Alafia, Kamusta. Welcome to the Mind of Ro page. I am Oba Jaguna, Oguna Salamio. Today I'm going to make a video on my personal experience and my psychic and mindfulness realizations with a TBI. So if you're new to my page and you found this on YouTube and you're watching this, I did end up having a lot of psychic abilities since I had a traumatic brain injury. So I actually share a whole lot of information on the spirit realm. So my last video I made last week was actually on succubus and incubus. So if you like that kind of stuff, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Mind of Ro. I also have a TikTok and Instagram and a Twitter at Mind of Ro. And I also have a Facebook business page at The Mind of Ro, where I do readings. So if you would like to get a reading done, go ahead and shoot me a message or a comment and set an appointment with me, and we could do that. So if you're not sure what a TBI is exactly, a TBI stands for traumatic brain injury, a brain dysfunction caused by an outside force, usually a violent blow to the head from a severe sports injury, car accident, or an assault. Immediate or delayed symptoms may include confusion, blurry vision, and difficulty with concentration. So, I'm sure some of you, if you're watching this, you want to know, well, how did I end up getting a TBI? My personal TBI has came from a domestic violence about 3 years ago from dating a narcissist. So I actually share some information on dealing with narcissists on my page as well, if you would like to check that kind of stuff out. So, well, first, how do you know if you had it? Well, we know if we've ever hit our head at all, but how do you know if you have any long-term issues? For example, a post-concussion syndrome, which is symptoms that happen way after a brain injury or after a blow to the head. Here are some signs you could have post-concussion syndrome, even if it's been a long time since you hit your head or had a brain injury. Number one is extreme headaches, or a lot more common headaches than you did before you had your injury. Number two is dizziness or vertigo. You realize that you get really dizzy when you stand up really fast. A lot of us do that sometimes, but if it happens to you all the time, that's a sign you're dealing with post-concussion syndrome. Or if you used to never get dizzy by playing video games or riding rides, but all of a sudden you can't do any of that after a brain injury, that's a side effect of post-concussion syndrome. Also, fatigue, constantly feeling tired or feeling like you run out of energy way faster than you used to. Number four is irritability. You realize you get agitated with tasks or people a lot easier than you used to. Number five is anxiety. Number six is depression. I've noticed with my brain injury, the depression I get is not the same kind of depression I had prior. It's a different kind of feeling. Sometimes I feel like a flutter in my heart. It feels like something that I don't know what I'm depressed about, or sometimes I do know what I'm depressed about. Sometimes it's normal to feel depression towards the incident. And feeling like you can't, get better from it, so it can make you feel depressed. And also, you could just feel down because there's something that happened to your brain to make you feel down. All of a sudden, it's hard to get out of that emotion or feeling because of the injury to some neurons in your brain. Number seven is insomnia. Number eight is loss of concentration and memory. Number nine is ringing in the ears. Number 10 is difficulty multitasking. Number 7 is going into zombie mode. What I mean by zombie mode is not being aware of what you're doing or what's going on around you, and then you snap out of it later, realizing where was I at for this period of time. Another one is 12, which is restlessness. It's feeling like it's really hard for you to stay still and you want to be on fast forward. You want to hurry up and get things done. It feels like you run out of time, stuff like that. Also, hypersensitivity. Hypersensitivity makes you more aware than people without an injury. And this is something I really want to talk about because a lot of people who have not suffered a brain injury will not understand this. So the reason why I decided to make this video is I want to share some things that goes on within my mind due to a brain injury and realizations that I had and things that help me get through it. So hopefully if you're watching this helps you get through it and hopefully you don't feel crazy anymore, feel like you're being outcast by humanity, which kind of tends to happen when a lot of other people don't understand that your hypersensitivity and we get judged for it. So here are some So I learned to practice a lot of mindfulness with a traumatic brain injury. Mindfulness has helped a lot. So I don't want to be really vague with it. Obviously, we need to practice mindfulness in our life regardless. So I'm going to give you more details on how I practice mindfulness with all these symptoms that I just listed recently. So for example, headaches. It's normal for somebody after a brain injury to get constant headaches all the time, and mindfulness really works when we're really mindful of what's causing the headache. And a lot of times if you have a brain injury, a lot of times it's paired with a neck injury as well. So sometimes it's not really our brain that's giving us a headache, it could be our neck that's giving us a headache. So I realized that doing things for my neck will help. I got myself a neck pillow that helps with the pressure on my neck when I sleep, and I also got one of those this like a pump you put around your neck and you pump it up so it'll lift your head and take the pressure off your spine and get the pressure off to allow more oxygen and more blood flow to the brain. So if you get a lot of headaches, you could try that out. And if you have a neck injury with it, see if that helps you. Some people it works for them, some people it doesn't. So it just depends on you and what's going on with your neck. Headaches, I've also realized I got some earplugs called Vibes that I wear to block out a lot of outside noise because since I hit my head, I am really sensitive to sound. I could hear everything like a hound dog. I swear I could hear people's thoughts now. But because when we hit our head, a lot of our neurons in our brain actually ends up being very, very, very overactive. So for example, usually a regular person, for example, could be watching TV and the only thing their brain is going to focus on is the sound from the TV. But since we have a brain injury, our neurons tend to be on blast mode, and the reason why it does that is to protect the brain more from further injury or further incidents that could happen. So it's natural for the brain to be on superwoman or superman mode to protect it. And also because if you had some neurons that were damaged, then you're going to have some other neurons get turned on in your brain to help with survival so you could function and so you could take care of yourself. So I got myself some, they're called Vibes, and they're headphones, and they do help. I notice when I put them on, especially when I'm at work, because I also do hair, it keeps me from flooding. So if you're not sure what flooding is, flooding means it's when you start to feel really upset and angry and frustrated because your brain, it can't handle too much stuff that's going on, whether it's sound, sight, people coming into the room, somebody asking you too many questions or somebody talking too much to you, or just too much stuff happening like traffic, cars going by, stuff like that. And then you freak out and either I'll pass out sometimes or I'll scream and yell, which is an example of what flooding basically looks like. So personally, I started using earplugs when I go to work, and it's helped me. It keeps me from flooding. It keeps me from freaking out, getting overwhelmed by too much stuff because my ears are soaking in or being aware of less noise. So a person with a brain injury, when they're watching TV, for example, they're not only going to hear the TV, they're going to hear everything else in the background, the cars going by the house. Maybe there's a dog barking outside. Maybe somebody's next to you breathing and talking or on the phone. Maybe there's some noise in the kitchen. And a person with a brain injury is going to hear all of those noises and focus on all of those noises at the same time instead of just the TV, which will cause flooding and anxiety and the concept afterward to shut down or want to go to sleep or get tired and stuff like that. So I'm mindful of my headaches. I try to really pay attention that when I get a headache, am I getting a headache because I'm flooding, there's too much information going on, or am I getting a headache because there's too much sound? Is the TV too loud? Or is there too much sound around me? Am I getting a headache because my neck is hurting me? Or am I getting a headache because it's too bright in the room or something like that? So I also got myself a pair of glasses. I got rose-colored glasses that I read that's supposed to really help with that. And I do, so for those of you who have sensitivity to light, wearing rose-colored glasses is supposed to actually help you not get overwhelmed and not get headaches as much, because your eyes is processing a lot more light frequency and information when you have a brain injury than when you don't. So these are things that could cause you a headache, which is sound, sight, your neck and stuff like that. So these are things that I take the time to be mindful of when I do have a headache, is what is giving me the headache, and what do I need to do to stop that headache from coming, which would be to stop either my neck pain or to stop either the sound or light or whatever it is. So this is something that I realized on how to deal with headaches with traumatic brain injury. We don't have to live with it. It happens for a reason. It just doesn't happen for no reason. A lot of people with traumatic brain injuries think, oh, well, it just comes with it. It comes with it. We're just going to have headaches regardless, whatever. Yes, it's going to happen, but to have less headaches, it helps when we know exactly what is causing the headache, so we don't have to feel like we have to live with it. As long as we are pinpointing exactly what's causing it, those headaches will tend to go away and we feel a lot better. Next one is dizziness. So if you get really dizzy a lot from a traumatic brain injury, I get a lot. If I get up really fast, I get a really bad head rush. My face will turn like bright red, and I can't move until everything kind of calms down within myself. But this is a practice that one of my doctors actually gave me, which I noticed has helped. I don't get dizzy nearly as much. It's supposed to help with your idea of where you are in space. So if you get dizzy a lot after traumatic brain injury, there's a practice you could do. What you do is you look into yourself in the mirror, and you look at yourself straight in the eyes, and you focus, and you're gonna basically do yes and no's. You're gonna go yes about 10 times and then no 10 times, and you're gonna keep your eyes on your eyes in the mirror each time. And it's supposed to help you be able to process in your brain of where you are in space and time, and be able to be kind of one with yourself. So it's like your eyes are telling your eyes, hey, this is where we're at, this is what's happening, and we're here right now, type of thing. So it helps process that information in your brain, so you get less dizzy spells on a regular basis. The next one I am mindful of is my fatigue. So I get really, really fatigued. And I used to have a bad habit, even before I had a brain injury, is to drink a whole lot of coffee. So I already let go of that bad habit before I hit my head. So there are a lot of times where I want to drink more coffee, but I already told myself a long time ago, before I even had an injury, that I'm not going to live off coffee, because I know it's not good for us. I only drink 1 cup a day. That's my personal thing, unless I'm having a really crazy long day, but I don't drink that much. But I was also told that sometimes coffee could be worse, but I love coffee. I can't let go of coffee, but that's just me. If you want to let go of it, it's up to you. So when it comes to fatigue, I realize that there are just some days that I just need to veg out. When I say veg out, I mean just lay on the couch and just watch TV. Anything that's going to be easy to watch. Like, I like to watch adult cartoons. I love Family Guy. I love The Simpsons. I love watching stuff like that because it's stupid and I don't have to really process a lot of information watching it. So I realize that sometimes I just need to lay down and chill out. And fatigue could happen a lot when you're being really overwhelmed by a lot of things happening in your life, a lot of people expecting things from you, or a lot of people wanting attention from you. So something I kind of tend to do, which a lot of us do with brain injuries, is tend to keep to ourselves a lot. Personally, I'm in a point to where I'm starting to tell myself I need to get out there more and stop running away from packs of people, I guess. But right now, I've been kind of keeping to myself. Hopefully, eventually in the future, I'll start coming out more and being more around more people and associating with more groups of people. But we have to take a day of rest. I mean, every single person should anyways, but we need to understand that we need more than that, because our brain is constantly always processing so much information all the time, way more information that other people aren't processing because they don't have a brain injury. And fatigue, we just have to chill out. And sometimes we have to actually ask ourselves again, be mindful of what is making me feel fatigued. Is it because I'm working too much? Is it because I'm talking too much? Is it because I'm just doing too much, you know, stuff like that. So I don't work full time anymore. I used to work so much. I'm a hairstylist. I love doing hair. And some people even asked me, like, well, how are you still doing hair with a brain injury? I don't know. I think it's just a natural thing. I'm good with my hands. And I honestly believe going back to the salon after my brain injury has helped me be able to process the information of me doing something with my hand and my brain being able to communicate with my hand and being able to, for my brain to say, hey, hand, do this. Yes, that's crazy. A lot of people don't have to tell your hand to do something. With a brain injury, you kind of have to retrain. So I honestly feel like when I went back to the salon, it helped me a lot, but I can't do hair full time anymore. I used to do hair so much. I used to work 50, 60-hour weeks. And if you're a hairstylist and you're watching this, you understand. A lot of us hairstylists or people who are in the beauty industry, we work like crazy. It's just a passion. It's so addictive, you know? And I love hair and I miss doing hair as much as I used to, but I can't do hair like I used to. I used to be able to do it 40, 60 hours a week, and I hope my phone's not dying. Let me check on it real quick. I hope it's not dying. It dimmed a little bit. But I don't do hair as much as I used to at all. I only work part-time. I work every other day, and it's still making me fatigued. So I'm actually about to drop another day off of it. And the reason why I'm going to drop another day off of it is also because I'm an ENIFA and I do readings and stuff, and I need the energy to be able to do that. I'm trying to transition over to do that more and do hair less. But if you feel like you're fatigued a lot, then you just got to drop things off. It's okay, and find a support group who's going to help you, who's going to help support you and be there for you. I haven't lived by myself since I hit my head, and a lot of people can't because we tend to forget things. We tend to forget to pay bills, and some person might be thinking, oh, you're irresponsible. It's like, it's different for a person with a brain injury. We just tend to forget things, and we get overwhelmed by things, paperwork and bills and just things that need to be done on a regular basis. It tends to be a little more frustrating with somebody with a brain injury. So if you get fatigued, a lot it's really good to find a support group, you know, good family members and stuff. Supportive family members, not crazy family members who's going to get on your nerves and make your injury worse. My next one is a big one, which is irritability. So it's common with a brain injury to be very irritable. And this is something that I have come to really be one with and realize, where is my irritability coming from? And something I realize is when I start feeling a feeling of rage inside myself, it's majority of the time it's because I'm starting to flood. That's my number one sign I'm about to start flooding. It means my brain is taking in too much information, and I get that a lot when I'm around a lot of people and there's like an event. Or bring me my charger before my phone dies. Thank you. I found somebody to support me and he's there for me. It's Baba. But irritability, I've noticed when I start to feel irritable and stuff, that's a sign of flooding. So if you're somebody with a traumatic brain injury, when you start to feel really irritable, you need to realize you're about to start flooding. And we want to catch it before we get to the point of freaking out and blowing up. And
here you go, baby.
Thanks. Is there a plug along the plug-in thing? Oh, I put it over here, under here.
Oh, okay.
Under the table, over here, the big table.
Big table.
Thank you. Okay, so I realized that when I'm starting to get really agitated, a couple things I think a lot of people need to be aware of, because we're super sensitive to things. Not only is it a sign that we're about to flood and freak out and stuff, it's also a sign that thank you. It's also a sign that it's not only, I don't want to say just PTSD, it's a sign that it's PTSD, that somebody could trigger you, because sometimes somebody might have this happen to them, thank you, because they had, they could have had it because they had a car accident, and I'm part of a support group, and there's a lot of people in there who had it happen to them because they went through a car accident, and it's really triggering for them because a drunk driver did it, and it's really messed up. And how do you get over that kind of stuff, you know? For me, it happened to me because somebody did it to me from assault, from an ex, so I could be very triggery. But something that I realized about hypersensitivity is, are we really triggering because something triggered us because of something that reminded us of somebody who did it to us? Or is it because we're hyper vigilant and we actually realize that person has similar traits, and for example, if you went through abuse, are you triggering because you subconsciously are aware of the same characteristics in that person that the person who abused you has as well. And this is something that I've come very close, I tell myself to be really, really aware of, because being hypervigilant after a traumatic brain injury basically means we're going to realize when somebody's energy is off way before a person who does not have a brain injury. So when it comes to irritability, we got to ask ourselves, are we about to flood? Are we just being overwhelmed? Do we need to step back and go to the other room? Do we need to go sit in the car and be away for a little bit? A lot of times, if we can't remove ourselves from the situation, I'm learning how to breathe. I'll ask myself, is there something particularly happening to make me trigger? Because when a person has a brain injury and they start to get irritable, a lot of times when I realize that, there's nothing even happening. It could just be some people walking through the door, and for some reason my brain can't handle it, and I'll start getting irritated. So I always stop and I ask myself, what is happening that's making me feel irritable? Did somebody say something to me? Is something happening? And so a lot of times when I'm at work, I realize there's nothing happening. I'm just about to trigger. Or I'm not about to trigger, but I'm about to flood because I'm getting overwhelmed. So that's something I've learned to do with my irritability. If I feel myself getting irritable, is it because I'm triggering? Or is it because I realized Joe that walked in said something passive aggressive to me, and he has the same exact energy as my ex did who abused me? And does that mean we should not be irritated? Absolutely not. We have a right to be. So there's a fine line between realizing, are we flooding, or are we picking up on someone's messed up energy and we're being judged by it because we have a brain injury? So this is something I've realized I'm very mindful of. Now I know the difference because I pay very close attention to my own irritability. And it's very common, even if you don't have a brain injury. I think a lot of us need to pay attention to that. Like, are we being irritable because we're just tired because we work too much, or we're stressed out from other things that's going on in life? Or are we being irritable because something is really happening and we're avoiding it? Is somebody treating you or talking to you in a passive aggressive way and pretending like they're not, and you're subconsciously aware of it, but you're not allowing yourself to be consciously aware of it, which means we're having a bad habit of trying to push it away, which causes anxiety, and then we're not aware of where the anxiety is coming from. So I've realized when we're irritable, we have to be really mindful of why we're being irritable, because the more we try to be like, oh no, I'm not allowed to be irritable, I'm not allowed to be mad, so I'm going to shove it down and ignore it and pretend it's not there, and it doesn't solve anything, you know? We need to understand why we're feeling this way. Like, what do we need to do to solve this irritability within ourselves? Do we need to take a time out? Do we need to confront the person who's irritating us? Say, hey, you're a jerk, stop being a jerk. You know, is that what it is? The next one is, anxiety. I just mentioned that one, which actually always ties to irritability, which is the same exact concept. If we're feeling really anxious all the time, are we anxious because we drank too much coffee? Are we anxious because we smoked too much tobacco? Are we anxious because we're thinking about things we don't need to be thinking about? Or are we anxious because we subconsciously really have an intuition and a feeling that something just isn't right, and then we need to do something about it, but we're not doing something about it, so we just sit in anxiety and blame it, like the pain meds all the time. Oh, well, you just have a chemical imbalance, that's why you're anxious. There's a reason why. And a lot of times when we keep ignoring our anxiety, we're actually dismissing the message that source or our consciousness is trying to tell us. So when we feel anxiety, why are we feeling anxious? Is it a sign that we need to stop drinking so much coffee? Is it a sign that we need to stop smoking so much cigarettes? Is it a sign that we need to stop hanging out with toxic people that make us anxious? Is it a sign that there's some PTSD within us that we're triggering, that we need to sit with ourselves and heal ourselves? But the more we ignore it because we want to label it as, oh, it's just anxiety, it's not going to help anything. It's not going to do anything. So this is a mindfulness technique that I've realized. Every time I feel irritable, every time I feel anxious, I sit with it and I think, why am I feeling this way? I don't point blame. I really evaluate my surroundings and let myself be one with my hypervigilance. Because a lot of us people with traumatic brain injuries, we are told by other people without traumatic brain injuries, there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with your brain. There is something wrong with their brain, but at the same time, we're hypervigilant, and hypervigilance isn't wrong. We're just aware of things that a lot of people are not aware of, and we've never been taught how to deal with it. So I would say anybody who's dealing with a traumatic brain injury, a post-concussion syndrome, has ever had a concussion ever in their life. A lot of times, people can have post-concussion syndrome and not even realize they've been living with it for so long. You know how many people has told me that their mom told them they freaking dropped them as a child, or they hit their head on the shelf and they had to go to the doctor when they were 7 years old? So this happens all the time, and a lot of us are actually living with brain injuries and not even realize that we are living with brain injuries. Another one is depression. I struggle with depression sometimes because it's hard to live with the fact that this happened to us. So that could cause a lot of depression. And then I know personally, sometimes I could get to a phase of, oh, woe is me. Now there's a brain injury. Now I have to live with this for the rest of my life. Or maybe I don't, or whatever. I'm tired of trying to heal it all the time. I'm tired of feeling like every single day I have to try to heal my arm or heal my neck or heal my brain. When can I actually just be? When can I actually just live? And a lot of us are like that. A lot of us who have it are not only like that in regards to having to heal ourselves, but also in regards to how it happened. A lot of people don't even want to get in cars anymore. A lot of people are really angry because some drunk driver hit them and they feel like they weren't in jail not long enough for it, and they have to live with these injuries for the rest of their life. For me, I had a person do this to me, and I don't know why I did, but I loved him at some point. This person that was supposed to love me back did this to me. It's easy to feel depressed. It's easy. Some people say it's easy to not feel depressed as well, but something I realized, some mindfulness techniques that I have to tell myself is, do I want to be depressed all the time? I absolutely don't. So I have to tell myself to do things that take depression away. What's going to make me happy, What do I want for myself? So I'm not focusing on what somebody took from me, but what can I actually have? So a lot of times I'll tell myself, there's a gift that I got out of it. I wasn't able to be this psychic before. I mean, I was already an empath prior, but I wasn't nearly as psychic as I am now because of the brain injury. I'm not giving the person a pass. I'm not saying it's okay for him to do this because, oh, now I'm a gift, now it's a gift. I really don't accept, I don't accept anything that he said. Anything that he said or did to me or caused in my life. I hate the dude, to be honest. He could fall off a bridge somewhere, I could care less. But I have to tell myself, I gotta live, I gotta do things that's gonna make me happy. And something that I realize what helps me a lot too with my depression is connecting with people who feel the same way. Because a lot of times people feel alone. A lot of times when people have injuries and they have to deal with chronic pain every single day, a traumatic brain injury, what sucks about a traumatic brain injury is no one can see it. The only people who know about it are people who are close with you and they live with you because they watch you do weird brain injury stuff. The people at work or a lot of people that aren't around you, they don't get it. People who watch me on the videos, a lot of people don't know that I have a brain injury. I mentioned it before, but people don't see it. If you don't have a scar on your face or you don't have a cast, a lot of people just assume you're okay. If you're not sitting in the hospital, a lot of people just assume that you're okay. It's the unseen injury, But what helped me a lot? I do a lot of Orisha work. If you follow my page, I share a lot of information about the Netru and the Orishas. That's what I found that helped me a lot. It helped me with my depression. I take a lot of vitamins. I take magnesium. I take St. John's Wort. I always take vitamin B's and vitamin D's, and it does help a lot. I tend to eat a little too much sugar sometimes when I feel depressed, but I also have a partner that I speak to when I'm feeling depressed. So if you're out there and you feel depressed, don't just sit in the dark and play the woes me thing. It gets worse when we do that. I know because I've done it before. We have to talk to somebody and we have to be around positive people. Now, if you're a person who hangs out with a lot of negative people who are depressed as well, it's not going to help you. If you want to be happy, you got to hang out with happy people without resenting them for being happy. How can you be happy if you're hanging out with people who want you to be depressed with them? It's not going to help you. So this is what I've realized is, there is just some people I had to shut out of my life because I don't want to be depressed like that. And I know that sometimes I get that way. We all get that way sometimes, but it makes it a lot easier when we're around positive people who don't want to be in that cloud every day and want to rationalize that pain every single day. It's good to surround ourselves with people who's going to uplift us and help us move away from that cloud and not trying to rationalize on why we need to stay in the cloud. It's not good for anybody. I personally don't have any insomnia issues. I sleep a lot. I sleep way more than I used to. There's times where I slept just straight 14 hours. all night, 12, 14 hours. Since I hit my head, I sleep a lot. I'll now and then I'll get a normal night where I'll sleep for like 8 hours or something like that. But a lot of times I'll go through my phases where I sleep a lot. So I have the opposite of insomnia. So if you're watching this and you have insomnia and you found ways to deal with it, you found things to help cope or help you, please leave a comment or shoot me a message and let me know what you have found to help you with that. Because personally, I don't have experience with insomnia. I sleep a lot and I think it helps me. I feel better when I wake up after I sleep a lot. That's what I have to do. Sometimes we just got to let ourselves sleep. And if your body wants to sleep, let it sleep. The next one is loss of concentration and memory. So I got lion's mane and I also got, I can't remember that. After this video, I'll leave a comment under this video and say what the other memory vitamin that I'm taking has actually helped me some. I play brain games. So if you have any memory issues and concentration issues, I realize video games helps a lot. So play video. If you have an excuse to finally play video games, find some brain games that are specifically for cognition, for the brain, and it helps. And the reason why I would really recommend that is because my next point is going into zombie mode. And the reason why a lot of people with traumatic brain injuries tend to go into zombie mode, when I say zombie mode, I mean we go onto autopilot. I used to be on zombie mode so bad to where someone could say something to me and I don't even know what the hell they were saying to me. I wasn't even processing the information and I wasn't even very responsive at all. There was a time where I could barely even speak. For the first 3 months of my traumatic brain injury, I couldn't even verbalize anything. If somebody asked me what I wanted for dinner, and I know in my head I wanted spaghetti, and I could picture the plate of spaghetti in my head, but for some reason my mouth couldn't say spaghetti. And I would get so frustrated and angry that I couldn't say what I was picturing in my head. I obviously can speak now. I've done a lot of practices and stuff like that. I actually found some speech therapy practices you could find online, a list of things that you could do. One thing that helps, singing. Singing a lot helps. Something that I've noticed too that I do that helps with my verbal skills. If you have any verbal skills from a traumatic brain injury, looking at pictures and saying it out loud. Looking at basic pictures like strawberry, ocean, duck, female, dog, pyramid, and saying it out loud, just looking at basic pictures and verbalizing it out loud and be able to see it and say it. I've realized that's what helped me with my communication skills. I also play word games. The ones where it has like the empty squares and then it has like the scrambled letters and then you have to make a word out of it. And I realized that has helped me a lot with trying to verbalize and be able to communicate words with what I'm thinking. And that has helped me a lot. So if you're having issues with verbalizing things, playing word games or word search and stuff like that, or simply looking at images and repeating it out loud, make sure you do it out loud. Because something I realized, if it's not out loud, it doesn't work the same way. And also, that goes back to memory. I can remember easier if I say it out loud. Or I have a habit of, if you have a lot of memory issues, once you remember something, it's good to just get it out right away if you know you're going to forget. So I do this with my spouse all the time. I know a lot of times I'll forget things. So once my brain remembers something, like for example, we need to go get milk. Can you get milk? Once I remember it, I can't tell myself, oh, I'm going to tell him later. Because I know a lot of times I'll forget. So once I remember something, I have to say, okay, I remembered it. I have to let him know and tell him now. Or I have to write it down right away, or I will forget. Or if I need to do something, I'll have to put it in my calendar in my phone and help me remember. Because a lot of times we'll go into zombie mode. Basically, it's because it's so frustrating or irritating to try to remember or try to multitask or try to process information that we tend to just give up and say, okay, I'm just not going to do it. My brain would just be like, oh, that's too hard to do. And my brain is just like, nope, just click off, whatever. And then when we do that, it becomes so habitual that we could end up going to zombie mode for years, even, or months or weeks or days, and not even realize that we're in zombie mode. So that's why I start playing games, because it teaches my brain to, if I'm not using that part of my brain during the day, it'll train my brain to say, hey, you're going to use this part of your brain right now with this video game, and you're not just going to give up and turn off. So it trains my brain to say, hey, I know it's frustrating, but you're going to use this part of your brain regardless. You're not just going to click out and go to zombie mode. And I feel like playing brain games has helped me with zombie mode. And always, when I forget things, always mention it right away. Don't suppose I'm going to remember later, because once I keep forgetting things, I will get really frustrated, and I'll go through a flooding series where I'm like, oh my God, I forgot this and this and that, and I start panicking and freaking out. So it's good to be mindful of what freaks us out and what is overwhelming and what is really frustrating us, so we could take care of it right away, so that flooding in the future doesn't happen. Like, for example, not saying something when we remember like we should have, for example. I used to have a lot of issues with multitasking. So I slowly started to get better at multitasking. I've noticed that I had to slowly kind of start doing it, because before I would wash the dishes and my spouse would say something to me and I literally could not hear him. It would be like, blah, 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 and my brain couldn't process dishes and somebody speaking to me at the same time. So I would automatically get frustrated and then not want to be bothered and get snappy, like, give me alone, leave me alone. And I'll get frustrated. And then I would start beating myself up and say, okay, why am I being a B for? What's my issue? And I realized it was just the inability to multitask, to be able to process somebody speaking to me and me doing something at the same time. So I realized to slowly switch up tasks, and I think now I definitely have it. It's definitely helped me now. I definitely am able to multitask way more than I used to, because I would teach myself to slowly start kind of doing it. Like, I would tell myself to go do this task and then move to another task and then bounce back and forth to tasks, to teach me how to multitask or learn how to do multiple things at the same time. And if I get frustrated, I learn to stay. I would tell myself, okay, why am I getting frustrated? Something that I realized, if I'm doing a lot of things, my mind will start to get angry about something that has nothing to do with anything. So this is something I've learned to be mindful of. And I have to ask myself, well, why am I all of a sudden thinking about this crap that happened 10 years ago? Why am I all of a sudden fixated on something else that frustrated me, that I wasn't even thinking about it until I started doing something really active? And that's something that I realized that our brain will do, because we need to take our aggression out on something, because our brain is just frustrated because it's doing something. So it'll find something to get angry and mad about. And that's something we need to be mindful of as people with traumatic brain injuries is, are we really mad at that person who pissed us off last week or last month? Or am I just frustrated because I'm doing the dishes and my brain's like, stop doing the dishes, this is too much right now? That's just something to be mindful of. So that's just something I realized, that I don't really have anger outbursts as much as I used to, because I'm mindful of what's really making me frustrated and what is not really making me frustrated. I'm trying to take my frustration out of it, So another one is restlessness. This is really common with somebody with a brain injury, to either be in zombie mode or to be in restlessness, which is a constant feeling of an adrenaline rush is what it is. So if you're not in zombie mode with a traumatic brain injury, it's normal for the brain to want to be in survive mode, because if your brain is in zombie mode for too long, it tends to slow down even more and more and more. So sometimes I notice what my brain does, and I heard that a lot of people's brains do, well, they'll go into a moment of restlessness, which is like the brain would be like, okay, you're slowing down too much, you're going into zombie mode, we don't want you to go there. So all of a sudden your brain will like process a bunch of adrenaline, your system will process a bunch of adrenaline just out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you want to do everything at the same time and you rush, and there's not enough time to get it done. And it feels like a high. It feels like it's like, oh my God, I feel powerful, I gotta hurry up and do this, and I have to do it now, because if I don't do it now, I'm gonna go back into zombie mode. And it's a back and forth type of feeling. So I've realized I have an issue with that, with either being on zombie mode or going into my adrenaline super rush mode. So I actually started going to biofeedback. Biofeedback helps a lot. Biofeedback helps us process information that triggers us and to be able to be one with it, so we're not freaking out or being overwhelmed, because the brain is trying to process information that it used to be able to process before, but now the brain's like, oh my God, what's happening? So biofeedback is a practice where they kind of like show you things or have you do things and to test to see where you start to kind of trigger and slowly start to bring things into your awareness that usually would bother you as you slowly get used to it. For example, math, being able to identify colors, or having multiple people come into the room, being able to count backwards or forward, or stuff like that, or be able to identify images and stuff without freaking out, without getting anxious, or without shutting down. So far, biofeedback, I haven't been going off. I just started going, and not only does biofeedback help you get used to those triggers so your brain can process the information, but it also helps you realize what is really damaged in your brain and what is really not damaged in your brain. That way the doctor can pinpoint this part right here isn't really that much of a struggle. We've got to retrain it. And this part is. That way they could more pinpoint what's really the issue, what really needs to be focused on and what really doesn't need to be focused on as much. So if you're watching this and you really struggle with the triggers and stuff and the flooding and not understanding what is causing it, if you go into biofeedback and you want to get rid of the triggers and the flooding, biofeedback will help with that as well. So I want to talk about mindfulness of PTSD. So this is something that I'm sure this is a lot of people who has been through this an injury understand how this is. So I've had a lot of issues trying to find doctors that actually act like they give a damn. Okay, so I have had a brain injury, a neck injury, and a shoulder injury for over 3 years now. And if I listened to Western medicine, I would have been on 3 or 4 different pharmaceutical drugs right now if I listened to them. Personally, if you want to be on a bunch of pharmaceuticals, to each their own. I'm a naturopath. I believe in Mother Nature. I believe in Gaia. I believe in the power of Osign. So I actually started to go to a natural hospital, which is Bastyr. That's my place where I go, where I see my doctors. And to be honest with you, out of all these 3 years, out of all these doctors, I have been through so many doctors, I have lost track. So a lot of times a doctor would be like, well, who's your doctor? What doctor have you seen? There's like a list of doctors I've seen, like a list of them. So many I cannot keep track. These are the first people who actually act like they give a damn, and they actually act like it's more than just PTSD. So something I've realized with the traumatic brain injury, there's a difference between a PTSD reaction and a traumatic brain injury reaction or common side effect. And the issue with a lot of these doctors out here, if the doctor is not specialized in the brain, they don't know what they're talking about. If the doctor has no experience dealing with people who have traumatic brain injuries, the doctors and the nurses don't know what they're talking about. They will just try to say, oh, well, you just have anxiety and depression. Let's just put you in a bunch of Xanax and put you on a bunch of Zoloft and then call me in the morning. That doesn't heal the traumatic brain injury. What heals the traumatic brain injury is actually pinpointing the part of the brain that's injured and that's not working correctly. That's why I really support biofeedback, and I really support medicines like lion's mane and stuff like that. So somebody said all with no brain. Personally, I've had a brain scan. Somebody responded, said with all with no brain scan. Yeah, a lot of people will do that and say you do, and not even try to brain scan you. The issue that I have, what's sad about that, I did have a brain scan and they still didn't help me, which pisses me off. I joined a support group where multiple people has had a scan and an MRI or a CAT scan on their brain, have proof and evidence that they have a brain injury, and the doctors and nurses still act like, oh, it's just PTSD, whatever. It's BS. There's so much crap that they don't care. 50% of people who has had a traumatic brain injury have I think it's more than that. I looked at the statistics online. It said 50%. I don't believe it. I honestly believe it's more. But there's so many people who suffer from traumatic brain injury and they're not getting the help and the guidance that they need because they want to put them on some antidepressant or some anxiety med and try to act like, oh, it's just PTSD. It's not just PTSD. Yes, PTSD should be recognized because if we went through a traumatic moment, everybody should get some kind of help and psychological help with that. But there's a difference. There's a difference between somebody reacting to a situation because they get triggered, and there's a difference between somebody acting that way because their brain is so damaged that they don't know how to process the information that's happening. So my personal experience, I've dealt with a lot of doctors who wanted to label things as only PTSD and put me on a lot of drugs, which I did not do, and not actually take care of my brain injury. And I've had multiple doctors who only wanted to give me pain meds only for my shoulder and my neck and paid no attention to my head injury at all, which I had all at the same time. So I've always wondered this, honestly. I'm like, okay, so my arm and my shoulder is going to be this damaged for this long, but you're just going to ignore my brain that like decides everything, that controls everything. You're just going to ignore that? Like, are you serious? So I actually finally found some doctors that actually helped me. And I connected with a lot of people online. I found support groups on Facebook that have been very, very supportive. And I love connecting with people and support groups. So if you've had a traumatic brain injury, I will tell you, please find a support group online. There's a lot of traumatic brain injuries and post-concussion brain injury support groups on Facebook, and you're not alone. I have joined them and I realize I'm not crazy because there's a lot of things that happened, my experience with my traumatic brain injury, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who to go to, and I didn't know what steps to take to get guidance, to get help, because I had never been through it before. I don't know. And I realize I'm not crazy. I realize that being in zombie mode or being in a restless phase or just weird phenomena is happening and stuff, I realize I'm not alone. And sometimes we just need to realize, I don't care if it's a brain injury or you lost a leg or an arm or just went through something, we need the support so we understand that we're not crazy and we're not alone. And that a lot of the reactions we have to trauma, whether it's psychological and physical, we need support in that. We need to understand that there's other people out there who feel the same way, because it's normal to feel alone. It's normal to feel like there's this book somebody recommended me to read called Ghost in the Head. I've never read it yet, but I want to read it. When I first hit my head, I wrote 2 poems. One of my poems was about the feeling of being lost in my head. It felt like a ghost in my head. It felt like I was tied to a chair and I couldn't move and I couldn't scream and I couldn't verbalize what I wanted and what was going on. And my other version of me was outside the door in front of me. And I wrote this long poem about it. I'm going to see if I could find it on my Facebook business page and at the Mind of Ro, by the way. And I'll paste it on here so you could read my poem that I wrote. I wrote that when I first hit my head, when I wasn't able to actually literally speak for 3 months. And I was out of work. I couldn't return to work. I was out of work for 3 whole months. I couldn't work because of my injuries and because of my brain injury. But I wrote a poem about it, about the ghost in the head. And this is something that I really, really realized is we think we know who we are. And now it makes me think, like, when you hit your head, everything changes. Everything, like your identity that you identified yourself with changes, because then there's like an identity that we associate it. Our brain associates ourselves with it. But if something traumatic happens to your brain and your brain's like, I don't associate with that personality anymore, then you go to an area where you're like, well, who am I? And then you're like asking the voice, well, who's asking? Well, who am I? Well, who's asking? Well, why do you want to ask? And then it feels like you're talking to a ghost in your head because you don't know who you are anymore. Because the conditions you had prior to the traumatic brain injury gets released and not released, but you come into more awareness of it. A lot of people who have traumatic brain injuries, all the stuff they went through as a child comes back up again, and they remember all of this. And then we lose a part of our personality. A lot of people who hit their head, they become a totally different person. A lot of people go through divorces, sadly to say. If somebody was married and one of them goes through a traumatic brain injury, a lot of them end up going through a divorce because the person doesn't even know who they're married to anymore. It's not the same person anymore. They don't talk the same. They don't like the same things anymore. Their personality completely changes. So then I had to get to know a new me, which is another journey in itself. And this is something that I realize that we all do. Everybody with a traumatic injury, what we all do is we try to become the person we used to be. So one of the side effects of a traumatic brain injury is to exaggerate the person we used to be, which is really a weird phenomenon, right? Because your brain's like, well, we're not this person, but you remember being this person. So I'm going to try to act like the person I remember being. So it's like you pretending to be you. It's weird, right? So a lot of people will do that, or they'll just completely change and not know how to identify with the other version. And I went through that. I actually spoke differently. The only reason why I started speaking a little more how I used to speak before was because I went through some initiations through the Ifa priesthood. So if you're new to my page and you're watching this on YouTube, I practice Ifa. I got initiated into an African traditional religion called Ifa. And I started working with the Orishas, and working with them has healed me a lot. It healed my mind. It healed my personality. It brought a little piece of me, who I used to be, back to who I am now. If you've been watching my YouTube videos for a while, some people have noticed this. Some people haven't. It depends on how long you've been watching them. There's a moment of some videos I made back when I lived in Virginia, where I was a lot more outgoing. And then after I hit my head, I started making some videos on chakras, and I was a completely different person, completely different vibration, completely different energy. And I started going through my initiations in Ifa, and my personality and who I am prior to my injury started to slowly kind of come back, but also a different me. And something I realize is when we hit our head, we have to understand this is something I had to accept. I'm never going to be that person anymore. I'm never going to be the person I was before I hit my head. I never am. And that's a part of me I have to let die and let go and leave, and just leave it. And I have to accept who I am now and love who I am now. And just understand that who I am now isn't worse or better than who I was before. It's just different. So you think it's hard to find yourself. Imagine trying to find yourself with a new brain. I had a new brain that worked totally differently, read books differently, processed information differently, listened differently. And I have to get used to it. Actually, I made another video on this about a year ago, and how I became psychic with a brain injury, and how I felt like for a while I was going crazy, because I felt like I went through an initiation into a Batala, and there's something what happened where it woke me up out of zombie mode, and I was in zombie mode for like 2 freaking years, where I wasn't even aware of all the way when someone was trying to talk to me. It was crazy. It was crazy, and I didn't know where I was. And I literally felt like I had a different personality. I felt like another soul came into my body and took over my body, and I didn't know where that other soul went. Until today, I honestly still question that. I believe in as above, so below, as within, so without, as our soul, so the universe. I believe that everything that happens in the physical realm is aligned with the non-physical realm. We cannot separate ourselves from the non-physical realm. Therefore, if you have a brain injury, you cannot separate your physical brain injury with anything that's happening in the non-physical realm. So I had to ask myself, why did I have a brain injury? I found out it was because I wasn't following my purpose. I was supposed to get initiated into Ifa and be practicing and being a priestess a long time ago, and I was taking too long. So the universe was like, here, brain injury, wake up. And it woke me up. And it woke me up very harshly, in a very hard way. It was very traumatizing. And I hate that I have to live through it, live with this crap every single day. But I have hopes that eventually it'll go away, and I'll just be me, and I'll have to keep dealing with it. And I can actually be, and I have to focus on healing it every single day, all the time. And this is something I've been thinking about. When do we actually get to just be? When do we actually get to just stop always saying, I have to heal this and I have to heal that? Something I've had a realization recently is, I understand we have to heal a lot. I do. But when we heal one thing, then all we do is focus on healing the next thing, and healing the next thing, and healing the next thing. And it's like, when do we actually get to just be? So this my next journey, is to learn how to just be. And then hopefully some months go by and I'll make another video on how did I learn to just be and not always focus on healing. Doesn't mean we shouldn't heal. Of course not. We should always be healing. But how do we find a balance of being able to heal and just be with who we are and not feel like we have to heal the next injury, heal the next trauma, or heal the next drama, or heal the next PTSD, and be able to heal but be at the same time. So that's my new goal in life, is to realize I don't want to stress out because I have to heal all the time. It's very stressful. It's stressful. Nobody wants to wake up and be like, here I go with some more arm pain, with some more traumatic brain injury, weirdo stuff that I do, and I have to heal it again. I don't want to think like that. So my new goal is to learn how to just be and not always focus on healing all the time, but while I'm healing, of course. So I became very, very psychic with my brain injury because hypervigilance is basically being psychic. And if you're watching this and you have a traumatic brain injury, something that I realized, a lot of people who do not have a traumatic brain injury, they don't understand what it's like to be hypervigilant. They don't get it. They never will. Unless they start to work on opening their third eye, or unless they end up getting their brain hurt, or if they actually end up starting doing some research and start reading up on being psychic and the spiritual realm. If people around you aren't reading on this stuff and you're hypervigilant, they're not going to understand. And it's something I realized, a lot of people who are not hypervigilant will judge you for being hypervigilant. If you have a traumatic brain injury and you're super hypervigilant and you are aware of everything, good for you. That means you are more aware of this planet and the world and the emotions and the auras of other people and everything else happening around you, and other people aren't. That's a good thing. And we need to be one with that. So ever since I hit my head, I've learned to be one with my hypervigilance. And when we try to push our hypervigilance away, we're denying ourselves. It's a gift. It's a gift from God. It's a gift to be able to have your neurons be completely turned on max mode. Majority of humans don't use their whole brain. So when a person injures their brain, more neurons is turned on, which actually makes them more hypervigilant and more aware than a person who doesn't have a brain injury. And then we get labeled as people who are stupid, or people who are like dumber or slower because we get frustrated because we see and we hear and we notice more things in them. And we're the ones with the issues. Yeah, it kind of sucks to flood when we get that stuff, but it doesn't make us stupid. People who with brain injuries who are hypervigilant, they're not stupid. They're just overwhelmed from people with messed up energy and messed up energy from the planet. But people try to lie or try to play some passive aggressive or say some passive aggressive comments, and they're hiding behind a fake facade. People who are hypervigilant could feel that. We could see through people. I could smell a narcissist from more than a mile away. I noticed it right away. No one could get that past me. No one could get gaslighting past me. No one could get brain games or mind games past me. Nobody can. And a lot of people who try to play this crap, and people who aren't even aware of their self, will try to make it seem like there's something wrong with you for noticing it. So if you're watching this and you are hypervigilant, you are powerful. I started using it to my advantage. I do readings now. I was never doing aura readings until I hit my head. All the aura readings and all live videos you guys see on my YouTube page and my Facebook, I had an injury before that happened. I wasn't doing any psychic readings before that. I started doing it after I hit my head. I started being able to feel everyone's auras, and even not all the time, I almost hear people think and know people's intentions. And I could even see visions of the future. I could hear spirits speak to me. I could hear the Orishas speak to me. I could hear the Netaru speak to me. I could hear ancestors speak to me. There's an ancestor that told me her life story, which I want to write a book on. It's amazing, sad, but amazing that she could tell me her whole story, and I could hear everything. I see my dead dog come to me. These are gifts from God. Why are we being told that we need to shut it down or shut it off? Because they're jealous. A lot of people are jealous that you can see things and you get aware of things, and then they're not. So if you hit your head and you have a traumatic brain injury and you're more hypervigilant and your soul is telling you this person has hidden agendas, then listen to it. Listen to your intuition. I share this all the time in my chakra group about your intuition, about our third eye. Number one of the best third eye affirmations is, I trust in my intuition. Because the moment we don't trust into our intuition is the moment we start sabotaging our life and start doing crap we know we shouldn't have done. I mean, how many times have you did something where you're like, oh, dang, I knew I wasn't supposed to do that. That's why we don't listen to other people. We listen to our inner self, which is our intuition, which is our connection to source. So I have done so much research online and tried to look up brain injury or traumatic brain injury or concussion or post-concussion syndrome in psychicness and psychic gifts and stuff like that. And not anyone is talking about this. And as a person who has a traumatic brain injury and I have freaking superwoman powers now, super hyper vigilant, I think people need to be aware of this. If you hit your head and you're hyper vigilant, you basically have gifts that other people don't have. And the Western medicine is shaming you for it and telling you, take all these drugs, you could shut up shut up your own spirit. Don't shut your spirit up. They're the ones with the issues. They're the ones who's actually literally, scientifically using less neurons than you. People with a brain injury use more neurons than a person who hasn't hit their head. And this is a proven fact. They've proven this. They've done studies on this. So who really needs to be listening to who, honestly? Does it mean that we shouldn't be healing ourselves? Of course, because we need to learn how to adapt to it. Instead of shutting down and trying to ignore it and take a bunch of drugs to drug us out and to take away to silence the gift, we need to learn how to live with it and we need to learn how to be one with it. So I've learned to be one with it, and that's why I am a Neonifa. And that's why I share information about forces of nature like the Netaru, the Loa, the Orishas, and the Eshus and the Pampajiras and ancestors. And I haven't made any on aliens yet, which I should, right? I'm sure if I could speak to the Netaru, I could talk to aliens. But a lot of people are just going to sit there and act like you're freaking crazy. I think people are crazy. They actually think the only thing that exists is their reality. That's crazy to me. That's crazy. So if you're watching this, you have a traumatic brain injury and you're hypervigilant, be one with it. Don't let anybody convince you to turn it off. Because that's the issue why a lot of people get pulled away from their higher purpose. Is some ignorant mofo came in their life and said, no, you're stupid for that, turn it off. No, I'm not doing that. And I don't think anybody should have to do it. If you had a brain injury and you're hypervigilant, learn to be one with it. Don't run from it. Because the more you run from it, the more anxious you're going to be, the more depressed you're going to feel, the more outcast, the more dumb you're going to feel, the more less than you're going to feel. You're like, everyone's better than me. No. Be powerful, man. Be one with your hypervigilant. If your intuition is telling you this, and listen to it. If you're not sure how to be one with your hypervigilance, I made a video on the third eye, and I'll make another video on the third eye. Please look up stuff on the third eye and learn how to work with it, learning to adapt with it, learning how to listen to it, learning how to control it. I have another video I made on how to protect yourself from negative energy. So if you are hypervigilant and you're really sensitive and picking up on other people's negative energy, I made a video on how to protect yourself from other people's energy. It's great for empaths because a lot of people who hit their head become very empathic, where they could soak in and they get very irritated by other people's energy. So if you're empathic and you feel that way, then please look out for those videos. Please watch my videos on how to be one with your psychicness. I will make some more on that. I think that's the only information that I have today. My next video is going to be on fear mongering. So this week, next couple of videos, I'm going to focus on fear. So one video is going to be on what is fear mongering. And the next one is going to be how to stop living in fear. And then I'm going to start doing a series of Orisha meditation videos. So if you like that kind of stuff, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Mind of Ro, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I have more wisdom and enlightenment to share with you. I hope all of you are having a conscious night. Ankh Ucha Seneb, Namaste, Odabo, peace.